Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. I'm excited to jump into something that I think is on everyone's minds these days, how businesses are bringing ethics and sustainability into their big decisions.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic.
It is, and you know what's really cool?
What's that?
We found this academic paper that really gets into it.
Oh, wow.
It was originally published in Spanish,
Okay.
but we've got the translation for you,
Awesome.
and it's dense,
Huh.
but it's super relevant.
I can imagine.
So ready to unpack this with me.
Definitely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so this paper dives deep into the why behind this whole shift. Like, why are companies realizing that ethical and sustainable practices are not just good PR, you know?
Right.
Like, they're essential.
Totally. And I think the paper does a really good job of highlighting that shift. Like it challenges the old way of thinking where profits were king.
Yeah, profits above all else.
Exactly.
But this paper is like, no, no, no. True success requires a more holistic approach.
Definitely a more well-rounded way of thinking about things.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's break that down. Where do we even begin?
Well, I think the paper starts with ethics and decision-making. That's really where it all begins.
Okay.
And the argument is that companies need to think about the moral implications of their actions.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's not just about the bottom line.
So it's really considering the ripple effects?
No.
Because a decision made, in a boardroom can impact employees,
For sure.
customers,
Absolutely.
communities,
Uh-huh.
the environment.
The environment, for sure. Yeah, it's like that butterfly effect, right?
Yes,
One small decision can have massive, unforeseen consequences.
exactly. So how does this paper then define ethics? Like in a business context, what does that even mean?
Right. Is it just about being nice, or is there like a real business case for ethical behavior?
Yeah, is there something more to it?
I think it definitely goes beyond just being nice. And the paper actually outlines 4 key ethical principles: justice, transparency, responsibility, and respect for human rights.
Those are really solid principles.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the paper argues that these principles aren't just like feel-good ideals. They actually make good business sense.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. How so?
Well, think about it. Companies that operate ethically, they build trust with their stakeholders.
Right?
Customers are more likely to choose a brand that they see as ethical. Investors want to support companies that are aligned with their values.
Yeah.
And employees, they want to work for companies that are doing the right thing.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so it's really about thinking long-term.
And wouldn't that kind of trust then lead to a more engaged workforce?
Absolutely. Employees who believe in their company's mission and values, they're going to be more productive. They're going to be more loyal.
Yeah.
And, on the flip side, unethical behavior, it can lead to some pretty costly scandals and legal
I'll
battles.
see those in the news all the time.
All the time. It's like, you think about that fashion retailer
Oh, yeah.
that faced boycotts and plummeting sales after it was revealed that they were using sweatshop labor.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah, and it shows that consumers are more aware than ever before.
Right. They're paying attention.
Yeah, and they're using their wallets to voice their values.
Exactly. And so for businesses, it's like you can't afford not to pay attention to this stuff.
Right. It's not just a nice to have anymore.
Exactly. Okay. So we've got the ethics piece. Now, what about sustainability? Because that's obviously another huge part of this conversation.
Yeah, and this paper really emphasizes that sustainability is about meeting our needs today without, compromising the future.
Right.
It's thinking long-term.
Long-term thinking.
Yeah, and considering the impact on the environment, on society, and the economy.
So it's not just environmental.
It's all 3. It's the triple bottom line.
Okay, paint a picture for me. What do those 3 dimensions of sustainability actually look like in action?
Okay, well, let's take a company like Interface. They're a global flooring manufacturer,
Okay.
and they've been on this mission to become a restorative enterprise, which essentially means that they're actively working to give back more to the environment than they take.
Wow. Restorative enterprise.
Yeah.
That's a powerful concept.
It is.
What does that look like in practice?
So for Interface, it involves a lot of really innovative strategies, like they're minimizing their environmental footprint by reducing emissions,
Okay.
using recycled materials.
Uh,
But they're going even further, and they're embracing biomimicry, which is basically designing products that are inspired by nature.
that's so cool.
So, for example, they created this carpet tile that mimics the forest floor,
Oh, wow.
not only aesthetically, but also in its functionality.
So it's like they're not just minimizing harm, they're actually trying to create a positive impact.
Exactly. And what they found is that this approach, is not only good for the planet, it's good for business too.
Of course, it makes sense.
Their sustainable practices have brought in new customers,
Yeah.
boosted employee morale,
Uh-huh.
and even led to cost savings.
Wow. Okay, so we've got this company interface really showing us that environmental sustainability is a tangible thing.
Yeah.
What about the social and economic dimensions, though? Because those are important, too.
They are, and Interface tackles those as well.
Okay.
On the social side, they're really committed to fair labor practices, safe working conditions,
Good.
and not just in their own factories, but throughout their supply chain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then economically, they've proven that sustainability can be profitable.
That's really important to show.
It is. They've found that investing in sustainable practices has actually helped them reduce waste, improve efficiency, and ultimately boost their bottom line.
So Interface is a really great example. They're doing it all.
They're a leader for sure.
But what about businesses that maybe don't have the resources of a huge global corporation? Is this just for the big players?
I don't think so. There are tons of smaller companies proving that ethical and sustainable practices are attainable no matter the size.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Take a company like Uncommon Goods, for example.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah.
They're like a marketplace of cool and unique, ethically sourced goods.
Exactly. They curate a collection of products from artisans and small businesses all around the world.
I love that.
Yeah, and they're focusing on fair trade practices and sustainable materials.
So they're showing that you can be both profitable and purpose-driven.
Exactly. Even on a smaller scale.
Love it. Okay, so it sounds like ethics and sustainability aren't just like separate boxes to check off, right?
Right, they're interconnected.
They're intertwined.
Yeah, and the paper makes this really clear. Ethical decisions lead to sustainable outcomes and vice versa.
It's not an either.
It's both hand.
It's like baking a cake. You need the right ingredients and the right technique for it to turn out delicious.
I like that analogy.
So we're seeing more and more businesses realizing that this is more than just a good thing to do. It's actually good for business.
Yeah, companies are starting to see the tangible benefits.
Yeah. What are some of those benefits?
Well, we're seeing things like improved reputation, reduced risks.
Uh,
It can even drive innovation.
that's cool. But wouldn't some companies push back and say that these practices are expensive?
Oh, for sure. That's a common concern, and the paper acknowledges that. There are upfront costs,
Right.
but it also highlights that the cost of inaction can be even higher in the long run.
Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. So what do they mean by the cost of inaction?
Well, think about the damage to a company's reputation if they're caught engaging in unethical or unsustainable practices.
Oh, right.
That can lead to boycotts, lawsuits, loss of customer trust,
It can really hurt them in the long run.
and all of that can severely impact their bottom line.
Yeah, so it's a risk-reward calculation.
Yeah.
Investing in these practices might seem expensive up front, but it can protect a company from much greater financial and reputational risks down the road.
Exactly. And in many cases, these practices can lead to cost savings, like reducing waste, using resources more efficiently, can lower operating costs.
Right. Less waste means you're spending less money.
Makes sense. Plus, there's the added benefit of attracting and retaining top talent,
Which also saves money.
which saves on recruitment and training expenses.
It's like a domino effect. One positive action leads to another.
Exactly. And it creates a more resilient and successful business overall.
But I'm guessing it's not all smooth sailing, right? There must be some bumps in the road.
Oh, for sure. The paper highlights some real hurdles that companies face.
Okay, so lay it on me. What are some of the biggest roadblocks when it comes to integrating ethics and sustainability into their operations? What are companies struggling with?
Well, one challenge is a lack of expertise.
Okay.
Some companies just don't know where to start
Right.
or how to implement these practices
This
effectively.
whole new way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's complex.
It's complex, and there's a lot to learn.
Okay, so lack of expertise, that's a big one. What else?
While measuring the impact of these efforts can be really challenging.
How so?
It requires really robust systems and metrics, which can be really complex and time-consuming to develop.
It's like that saying, what gets measured gets managed.
Exactly.
But if you don't have the tools to measure it, you can't really track your progress or make improvements.
You're flying blind.
Right. And then there's always that human element,
Element.
resistance to change.
Of course.
Because even with the best intentions, some people within a company might resist these new ways of thinking and doing business.
people get comfortable with the status quo,
Right. They do.
even if it's not ideal.
Yeah. So how do companies overcome that?
Well, it starts with strong leadership.
Okay.
Leaders need to champion these values.
Not just talk the talk.
Not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And they need to create a culture where these practices are embedded in everything the company does.
It's got to be baked into the DNA.
Yeah, it's like that ripple effect.
Yeah.
If the leaders are genuinely committed, it inspires everyone else.
Totally. Okay, so we've got the challenges laid out, lack of expertise,
Yep.
difficulty in measuring impact, potential for resistance to change.
Right. But this paper doesn't just leave us hanging with a bunch of problems.
I hope not. There's got to be a way forward.
There is.
Okay.
It offers a roadmap for effective implementation.
Okay, I'm all ears. How can companies overcome these hurdles and actually make ethical and sustainable practices a reality?
Well, it all starts with education.
Okay.
Companies need to educate their employees and their leaders on these concepts, helping them understand not just the how, but the why.
The why is so important.
It is. It's the foundation. And it goes beyond internal education, too.
Oh.
The paper emphasizes the importance of collaboration.
Collaboration.
Working with stakeholders,
Stakeholders.
including customers, suppliers, even local communities.
So it's really about building those bridges.
It is.
Creating a dialogue, finding solutions that work for everyone involved.
Absolutely. It's about aligning goals and creating that shared sense of responsibility.
Makes sense.
And then, of course, there's the role of technology.
Oh, yeah, tech. It's got to be part of the solution.
It is.
So tell me more about that. How is technology driving this shift towards, ethical and sustainable practices?
Well, technology can help companies reduce their environmental impact.
Okay.
Improve efficiency. Promote ethical sourcing in ways that weren't possible before.
So it's like finding those win-win solutions.
It is.
Where technology can drive both progress and profit.
Right. Like, give me some examples. I know you have some.
I do.
Lay them on me.
Let's talk about Unilever.
Okay.
They're a massive consumer goods company.
Huge.
Global reach.
Everybody knows Unilever.
They make products we all use.
Every day.
And they've made this big public commitment to sustainability through their sustainable living plan.
I've heard of that.
Yes. And they're using technology in some really, really cool ways to achieve their goals.
Like what?
So for one thing, they're tackling deforestation in their supply chain.
That's a big one.
It is. And they're doing it by using satellite imagery.
Wow.
And blockchain technology to track where their raw materials come from.
So they can really trace it back to the source.
They can trace every single ingredient back to where it came from.
That's amazing.
So they're ensuring that everything is sourced sustainably and ethically.
That level of transparency is incredible.
It's awesome.
And it holds their suppliers accountable, too.
Yes.
Make sure everyone's following the rule.
Exactly. They're also using technology to reduce plastic waste.
Okay, how are they doing that?
Well, they've developed these really innovative packaging solutions.
Okay.
Like refillable deodorant sticks.
Oh, that's cool.
Concentrated laundry detergent.
So you're using less water.
Less water.
Less packaging.
So they're not just offsetting their impact, they're actually rethinking how their products are made.
That's great.
Yeah.
What about social impact? Are they doing anything there?
Yes.
Absolutely.
What are they up to? So they're investing in social programs in the communities where they operate. And they're using mobile technology to provide education and healthcare access to people who need it most.
It sounds like they're really taking this holistic approach.
They are.
Addressing not just the environmental piece.
Yes.
But the social and economic side, too.
They're doing it all.
That's really cool. So did their commitment to sustainability actually impact their bottom line?
It did. They actually reported that their sustainable living brands are growing faster than their other brands.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it shows that consumers are willing to put their money where their mouth is.
They want to support companies that are doing the right thing.
Exactly. And it proves that doing good can also be good for business.
It's not an either situation.
It's both hand. It's like that rising tide. It lifts all boats.
Exactly. It's becoming increasingly clear that companies that prioritize ethical and sustainable practices, they're not just mitigating risks. They're unlocking new opportunities.
For growth.
For growth and for innovation.
Okay, so we've seen these big corporations like Unilever making big strides.
But let's go back to the smaller businesses for a moment. How can they actually implement these strategies without, breaking the bank?
Right. Well, there are a lot of cost-effective ways for small businesses to get started.
Okay, good.
One strategy is to focus on simple changes.
Simple but impactful.
Simple but impactful. Exactly. Like switching to energy-efficient lighting.
Okay.
reducing water usage,
Uh-huh.
implementing a recycling program.
Those are great things that every business can do.
Yeah, and these things can have a big impact on a company's environmental footprint without requiring a huge investment.
Right. Small changes add up.
And I think that kind of commitment can also be a great marketing tool for small businesses.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It attracts customers who share those values.
Absolutely, because consumers want to support businesses that align with their values.
Exactly.
And so being able to showcase that commitment can be a real selling point.
A differentiator.
So it's not just about doing the right thing. It's about letting people know you're doing the right thing.
Transparency is key.
Transparency is key. Okay, so we've got these tips, but I know it's not always easy.
It's not.
We talked about some of those challenges, the lack of expertise, the difficulty in measuring impact,
Yep.
the resistance to change. So how can companies really overcome those roadblocks?
Where the paper gives some really practical advice. It starts with committed leadership.
Okay, so it's not enough to just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Leaders need to be champions.
They do.
They need to set the tone and create a culture that embraces these practices.
And they need to put their money where their mouth is.
Invest the time.
Invest the resources.
It's like that saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
I love that one.
If the company culture doesn't support these values, even the best laid plans are going to fall apart.
Yeah. You got to have that foundation.
Okay, so committed leadership. What else?
Well, it's about being strategic.
Okay.
Instead of trying to do everything at once,
Right.
companies should focus on identifying the areas where they can have the biggest impact.
Prioritize.
Prioritize, exactly.
Start there.
And start small. Don't be afraid to seek outside help, too.
Yeah.
There are organizations and consultants who can help guide and support.
Especially if you're just getting started.
Exactly.
You don't have to be an expert in everything.
Sometimes it's smarter to bring in the pros.
A pros.
And remember, this is a journey.
Not a destination.
Yeah, no company's going to get it perfect right away.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And the paper emphasizes the importance of measuring and tracking your progress along the way.
So you can see what's working.
What's working?
What's not.
Make adjustments as needed.
It's like the scientific method.
It is. You have a hypothesis.
You test it.
You gather data.
You iterate.
And as companies gather more data, they can use that data to make better decisions.
More informed decisions.
More impactful decisions.
It becomes this virtuous cycle.
The more they learn, the better they get.
And then they can also use that data to communicate their progress.
To their stakeholders.
Build trust.
Build transparency.
Transparency.
It all comes back to that.
Which is key. Because consumers want to know that the companies they support, they're walking the walk.
Not just talking the talk.
Not just talking the talk. And that brings us to another really important point.
Which is?
Communication.
Ah, yes.
Companies need to be proactive about sharing their story.
They do. But it's tricky, right?
Yeah.
How do you communicate your efforts without sounding like you're bragging or greenwashing?
Right.
It's a fine line.
It is.
But I think the key is authenticity.
Authenticity.
Yeah, don't be afraid to be vulnerable.
Share your successes.
Share your challenges.
Be honest.
Be honest about the areas where you're still working to improve.
Because no one's perfect.
No one is.
And I think people appreciate that honesty.
I think so too. And, highlight the positive impact your efforts are having.
Yeah.
Whether it's reducing your environmental footprint, supporting fair labor practices, giving back to your community.
Share the good stuff.
Yeah, let people know what you're doing.
So it's really about storytelling.
It is.
Sharing the narrative of how your company is making a difference.
And remember, communication is a two-way street.
Oh, right.
Engage with your stakeholders, listen to their feedback, and be responsive to their concerns.
So it's not just broadcasting a message, it's about creating a dialogue.
Exactly.
Building relationships.
And when companies do this well, they can turn their stakeholders into advocates.
Ooh, that's powerful.
That is.
Amplifying their message.
Yeah.
Helping drive that positive change.
It's like building a movement.
A collective effort to create a more ethical
and sustainable future.
Exactly. And the paper actually argues that individuals have a big role to play in this movement.
They do.
It's not just up to the companies. We all have a part.
We all do.
So as consumers, we have the power to choose where we spend our money.
We do.
Which companies we support.
Voting with our wallets.
Exactly. We can also use our voices to hold companies accountable.
Ask tough questions.
Demand transparency.
Support the ones who are doing the right thing.
So it's about being informed,
And engage.
engaged citizens.
Using our collective power to make a difference.
And the more we learn about these issues,
Uh-huh.
the more effectively we can use that power.
Exactly. And that's why deep dives like this are so important.
Absolutely. It's all about empowering ourselves with knowledge
So we can make informed decisions.
and take meaningful action.
And when we do that,
Mm.
we can create a world where these practices
Ethical and sustainable practices.
are no longer the exception.
But the norm.
The norm, that's the goal.
That's the world we want to live in.
I think so too.
But how do we get there?
How do we get there?
What are some specific actions that our listeners can take to really make a difference?
It can feel kind of overwhelming at times, right?
It can. It's like, where do you even start? What can one person really do?
I get it. It's easy to feel like a drop in the bucket,
Yeah.
but all those individual actions, when you multiply them by millions,
Uh-huh.
that's when they create that ripple effect.
Yeah. Okay, so break it down for me. What are some concrete things that listeners can do to make a difference?
Well, it starts with awareness, I think.
Okay.
Educate yourself about the issues that you care about, whether it's climate change,
Uh-huh.
fair labor practices,
Right.
responsible sourcing.
There are a lot of issues out there.
There are.
Yeah.
And there are so many amazing resources available online these days. Documentaries,
Yeah.
podcasts,
Articles.
books, you name it.
It's all out there.
It is. The more you know, the more empowered you'll be to make good choices.
It's like they say knowledge is power,
Exactly.
but knowing is only half the battle, right?
Well-
You got to actually do something with that knowledge.
Exactly. And that's where those everyday choices come in.
Okay.
Think about the products you buy,
Uh-huh.
the food you eat, the clothes you wear.
Our everyday actions.
Our everyday actions, exactly. Do your research, ask questions, and support those companies that are walking the walk.
So be a conscious consumer.
Be a conscious consumer. Yeah.
Really think about the impact of our purchases.
And don't underestimate the power of your voice.
Oh, yeah.
Share your values with your friends and family.
Uh-huh.
Leave reviews for businesses.
Okay.
Engage with brands on social media.
Oh, social media is a powerful tool.
It is. It can be used for good or for bad.
Yeah, let those companies know what you care about.
What matters to you.
What matters?
And then there's collective action.
Oh, yeah. What about that?
You can support organizations that are fighting for the causes that you believe in.
Okay. How can people do that?
Well, through donations,
Mm-hmm.
volunteering,
Right.
even just spreading the word.
Sharing.
Sharing. Yeah. There's strength in numbers.
Joining forces with like-minded people.
Yeah. Finding your tribe.
It's amazing what we can accomplish when we work together.
It is. And if you're feeling really ambitious, you can always contact your elected officials.
Oh, yeah. Get political.
Urge them to support legislation that promotes these practices.
So using our voices not just as consumers,
But as citizens,
exactly, advocating for policies that reflect our values.
and remember, you don't have to be perfect.
No one is.
No one is. Every little step you take makes a difference.
Progress, not perfection.
Progress, not perfection.
And the more people that join in,
Yeah.
the faster we'll get there.
To that more ethical and sustainable future.
It's within reach.
It is.
Yeah.
And companies are starting to realize
Yeah.
that these values,
Uh-huh.
they're not just good for the world,
They're good for business.
good for the bottom line.
It's like we're at a turning point,
I think so.
a shift in consciousness,
Yeah.
doing
Is
good.
becoming the new normal.
It's an exciting time to be alive.
It is. It is.
It's up to all of us to keep pushing for progress.
I agree.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've learned so much.
We covered a lot of ground.
From those ethical principles that should guide business decisions
Uh-huh.
to real-world examples of companies actually putting those principles into action.
Yeah. It's inspiring to see.
It is. And of course, the role that we can all play in creating that more sustainable and just world.
We all have a part.
We all have a part. So to wrap things up, what's one final thought-provoking question that we can leave our listeners with?
How about this? What kind of world do you want to live in?
Okay.
And what are you willing to do to create it?
Oh, I love that.
Because we have the power to shape the future.
We do. We really do. So, dear listeners, as you go about your day, think about that question.
Yeah.
What kind of world do you want to live in? And what steps, big or small, can you take today
to make that happen.
to make it happen?
To make it a reality.
Because we're all in this together.
We are.
And the choices that we make collectively and individually,
Mm-hmm.
they will determine the world that we leave behind.
That's the truth.
It is. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep exploring
Keep learning,
and keep making a difference.
and we'll see you next time.